Have you ever found yourself dealing with just persistent bladder pain? Or maybe UTI-like symptoms that keep coming back? Or gut issues that flare up no matter what you try? You think you're doing everything right. You're eating all the healthy foods, but nothing seems to help. Well, what if the answer wasn't about eating cleaner, but about a hidden compound in those very foods? Let's get into it. This is the question that drives so many people crazy. You're loading up on spinach salads, you're snacking on almonds, you're having some dark chocolate as a treat, all things we're told are great for us. And it's so frustrating when you feel like you're doing all the right things. But for some of us, these exact foods could actually be part of the problem, feeding that cycle of pain and inflammation. Now, I know when you hear the word oxalates, your mind probably jumps straight to kidney stones. And you're not wrong, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg. What we're going to do today is explore what's happening beneath the surface, this really deep connection between this common plant compound, your gut, your immune system, and that chronic inflammation. Okay, so before we dive any deeper, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. What exactly are we talking about when we say oxalates? So scientifically, it's a pretty simple little molecule that you find in a ton of plants. But the easiest way to think about it is like it's a tiny magnet. And its main job, its whole purpose, is to grab onto minerals, especially calcium. And this binding action, this grabbing, that's where the story really begins. And this is where it starts to click for a lot of people. I mean, just look at this list: spinach, almonds, beans, beets, even our beloved chocolate and coffee. These are staples, right? They're in almost every healthy diet out there. It's not that these foods are bad, not at all, but for certain people, the high oxalate content is a really critical piece of their health puzzle. 80%. Let that sink in. A staggering 80% of all kidney stones are made of these calcium oxalate crystals. So that right there is all the proof you need of their power to crystallize inside our bodies. But like we said, that's just the most well-known part of the story. So how does a compound from your salad end up causing something like bladder pain? To really get it, we have to follow its journey through the body, from the moment it enters your digestive system to how your immune system can see it as a threat. You know, your body has this amazing built-in defense system, and it's your gut microbiome. See, we can't really break down oxalates on our own, but we have these tiny bacterial allies that can. The superstar of the team is a bug called Oxalobacter formigenes. It literally eats oxalates for energy, so when your gut is healthy and full of these little helpers, they take care of a huge chunk of the oxalates you eat. But what happens when that defense system gets knocked down? You know, maybe a course of antibiotics wipes out those good bacteria, or chronic gut inflammation makes it hard for them to do their job. Well, when that happens, the floodgates open. Way more oxalate can slip past your gut lining and get into your bloodstream. And this right here is the game-changing idea. We have to stop thinking of these crystals as just little rocks. Once they form, your body's immune system sees them as a threat, as an immune irritant that it needs to attack and get rid of. And here's basically how that immune response goes down. First, your immune cells spot these sharp little crystals and sound the alarm. It's a danger signal. This triggers a powerful inflammatory pathway that starts releasing all these inflammatory messengers. It's like your body is shouting, "Hey, we've got a problem over here!" The end result of all that signaling is inflammation and tissue irritation, which, you guessed it, can show up as bladder pain or that constant urinary discomfort. Okay, so we've established that high levels of oxalate can be a real issue. But where is it all coming from? Because it's actually not as simple as just what you're eating. So your total oxalate load in your body comes from two main sources. First, you've got dietary oxalate. That's the stuff from the food you eat. But second, there's endogenous oxalate, which is pretty wild because it's actually made by your own body. And this internal production can get ramped up because of your genetics or even from something as simple as a vitamin B6 deficiency, which means you could be on a low oxalate diet and still have a high oxalate burden. Now, there's another massive factor here, especially for anyone with gut problems. In some conditions where you don't absorb fat properly, like in Crohn's disease or after certain surgeries, that leftover fat in your gut starts binding up all the calcium. Remember how calcium is supposed to grab onto oxalate to carry it out safely? Well, now it can't. It's busy. This leaves the oxalate free and unbound, and it gets absorbed into your bloodstream at super high levels. This is a huge reason why gut health is so central to this whole story. Okay, so knowing all of this, what on earth can you do about it? Well, the key thing to remember is that the best strategy is smart and gradual. It is not a drastic, all-or-nothing change.
And this is so important. You might think the logical first step is to just cut out all high oxalate foods cold turkey, but a lot of experts will tell you that's a bad idea. It can trigger this thing called oxalate dumping, where stored oxalates get released from your tissues all at once, causing a massive temporary flare-up of your symptoms. We're talking pain, rashes, urinary urgency. It can really feel like you're getting worse instead of better.
So, the much smarter way to do it is slow and steady. You just start by observing what you're currently eating. Then you slowly, gradually reduce your intake, maybe by about 10% each week. And as you do that, you swap those high oxalate foods for lower oxalate ones. And all the while, the goal is to be supporting your overall gut health and making sure your mineral balance is in a good place.
And speaking of support, certain nutrients can be your best friends here. Think of calcium and magnesium taken with meals as bodyguards. They bind to the oxalate right there in your gut so it can't get absorbed. Vitamin B6 is great because it helps your body avoid making too much oxalate on its own. And other things like citrate and taurine can help prevent those crystals from forming and support healthy digestion. All right, let's pull it all together now and just take a look at the big picture. Why does all this matter so much? Because this isn't just about a single compound causing a single symptom. Not at all. Oxalate biology is sitting right at the crossroads of your gut health, your immune system, your mineral balance, and your metabolism. A problem in any one of these areas can create a ripple effect through all the others, and oxalates are often a key player tying it all together. So, the final question I want to leave you with is this. If you're out there struggling with these kinds of unexplained inflammatory symptoms, could this be the missing piece of your health puzzle? Look, it's definitely not the answer for everyone, but for some people, understanding their personal oxalate burden could be an absolutely profound step toward finally feeling better. And of course, just a reminder that this is all for educational purposes. It is so important that you work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any big changes to your diet or your health plan. Thanks so much for tuning in.